we should have Matt Robeson around 8:10. Okie dokie, good.
Salt. Everyone is welcome. They offer free appraisals and have great prices on all types of firearms, modern, military, and antique. They have over 450 tables with cash buyers on site for your used guns. Visit arhsportshop.com or call 724-948-3571 for more information. That's 724-948-3571 for more information. That's Washington County Gun Show, presented by ARH Sports Shop, April 10th and 11th.
From the Watchdog, here's your local weather forecast for your Wednesday. Mostly sunny with a high of 78. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low of 54. And for your Thursday, expect partly cloudy skies in the morning with a chance of showers and thunderstorms near dinner time and a high of 75. And that's your local weather forecast from the Watchdog.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Something to think about, something to laugh about, and something to talk about every day. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe. Brought to you in part by Wheeling Hospital.
Beautiful day of life outside. It's just absolutely gorgeous. The sun is up, the skies are clear and blue, and it's looking summery again as it was yesterday. Beautiful summer day yesterday, very much the same way today. We are still looking at 58 degrees. Let me double check. Yep, 58 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 58 degrees here at my home studio in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling, and 58 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group Studios, downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. Welcome to the show. Watching us on Facebook Live video or YouTube channel, feel free to like and share us on Facebook. Let more people know and more people see what we're doing. Always appreciate those of you who are dropping by and peeking into the home studio. Thank you for doing that. We are up on Facebook Live on my Facebook page and also on the Watchdogs Facebook page every day. And we're on YouTube and we're archived on the Watchdogs YouTube channel, so you can watch the video in archived form on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, just go to watchdognetwork.com, our website, and you'll find us there as well. Some of the things we're talking about today, Wheeling Council heard some complaints last night about water and sewer rate hikes. They also heard some complaints about the water and sewer system and why can't you fix it? And then they heard complaints about why are you raising the rates? Damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess. The Mayor's Committee on Economic Development discussed closer cooperation between the city and the county, which has always been talked about for years and years and years and years, but never seemed to get too much additional cooperation. We'll see if this is going to be any different. We've been talking about food a little bit today. Yes, we talk about food almost every day. But talking about Food Truck Friday coming to Catas this springtime. Every Friday will be a food truck visiting the square. West Banco Arena announced this week in their Facebook page that there's going to be food trucks lining the streets in downtown Wheeling for Waterfront Wednesdays this year, which Biff and I were discussing as a great idea. Charleston just reopened their outdoor dining concept, announced at least yesterday. They're going to close off a couple of the key downtown streets, and then they'll have tables out on the street, and people will have outdoor dining experiences there. We did something similar during part of the pandemic here in Wheeling because of you couldn't have indoor dining, only outdoor, so more people were trying to put some seats outside, and the city had to kind of change some regulations on that. I hope they continue that because I think outdoor dining is just great. Several restaurants have begun to add their own built-in outdoor dining, like the new outdoor space at the Alpha Tavern or the new deck that was built with Generations. Others, like the Bridge Tavern, simply began putting some tables and chairs on the sidewalk there on 10th Street. I think it's a great concept. I hope they're going to do that. So we're going to talk about food a good bit this morning as well. And then the story yesterday, which we talked about right around this time, you remember there was an 85-year-old man from Bethlehem who, first of all, was announced missing, and they spent a good bit of the morning looking for him. Turned out he had been involved in some kind of a car accident, but eventually was found and is in good condition. He had been found by Bethlehem, well, I don't know if it's Bethlehem, he had been found by police officers who took him to a gas station and let him out. And now there's some controversy over whether or not that was really the right thing for the cop to do. Morning Intel has a story about that. I see on Facebook there's a lot of debate going on about that, and we will get to some conversation about that in just a bit. But I want to take some time to talk about a couple of national stories first, and to help me do that is one of our newer political analysts here on the Watchdog Morning Show, a former campaign staffer and congressional staffer, a talk show host, a podcaster, Matt Robeson. Matt, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Howard, great to hear you again.
Good to have you here with us. I've been listening to many of your podcasts, which I'll tell our listeners about coming up in a minute or two. One that I listened to yesterday that I don't want to get into today because I got some other stuff. Maybe next week we'll talk about it because it was really insightful. You did a really neat podcast on how did we get where we are to be so polarized? How did we, it didn't happen overnight. And it wasn't just because of Fox News or something. There actually was a game plan to it, right?
That's right. It was, and it may have been sort of a law of unintended consequences type thing. I'm not sure that when the whole plan was launched almost 50 years ago that anyone could have foreseen where it would land. But you're right. There is a whole hidden history. And it goes back to a decision, like I said, almost 50 years ago to create a whole different way of viewing reality. It's that fundamental and that profound, a different set of facts, of ways of thinking about everything we do in our country. So I'm happy to just leave it there. If you want to talk about it next time, I can tease it, but if people want to check it out, it's in the Beyond Politics podcast. You can find that wherever you listen. I do an interview with a political scientist who's laid out this whole history, writing a whole book about it. His name is E.J. Fagan, and it's this whole hidden history of how we kind of bent reality and ended up living in two different political worlds.
And I think we'll just tease it there because I want to take some time to talk about that. It may have been unintended consequences, but there also was a long-term game plan that began with conservatives, and then liberals began to pick up their own version later. But there was a long-term game plan that began with creating think tanks, and then began with trying to get a little more attention in the media. I mean, again, it was well thought out. I mean, somebody somewhere said, we can't win tomorrow, but can we win next decade?
That's right. They didn't know if they were going to be so spectacularly successful. But, you're right. You're right. Where we ended up was definitely like the dream scenario for the folks who dreamed this up.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll just tease it at this moment because I want to spend some more time with that next week. But I actually wanted to talk about two stories today, somewhat connected. One of them is it begins with this Georgia voting law thing and Major League Baseball and Coca-Cola and so on. But Mitch McConnell's comments yesterday that businesses should stay out of politics struck me as the absolute height of hypocrisy from a man who's taken in, I think, $4 million in corporate campaign cash over the last election cycle. Businesses should stay out of politics, except when they're given to me. I mean, that's kind of, did I read that wrong?
It's a little weird. Both parties have, to some extent, ended up talking out of both sides of their mouth. But Mitch McConnell is probably doing it the most. What he said is that from election law to environmentalism, these are his words, not mine, to radical social agendas, to the Second Amendment, parts of the private sector keep dabbling in behavior like a woke parallel government. And he's criticizing the decision by Major League Baseball to pull the All-Star game out of Georgia, the decision by Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola. We coined a new phrase on my radio show yesterday. The host inadvertently called it Woca-Cola. So now what he's basically accusing corporate America of doing is drinking Woca-Cola. And, you know,
please tell your partner I'm gonna steal that. By the way,
you should steal it. You should absolutely steal it. It's free. It's free to all. But you know, look, it is strange because for a long time this is one of the gathering trends in American politics. You're seeing, I wouldn't call it a divorce by any means, but maybe a trial separation between the Republican Party and the large business corporate base, as well as some of the small business corporate base that, you know, they've been wedded together for a long time. You saw it in the aftermath of the insurrection when many large companies decided to withhold campaign contributions from Republicans who voted after the insurrection to overturn the results of the election. The funny thing about it is that voters consistently say, and consumers are voters, voters are consumers, that they want companies in America to take positions. Last summer, in the wake of all the Black Lives Matter protests, all of the social unrest going on over the summer, in the midst of that, 60% of Americans said in surveys that they want to buy products from companies that take positions. And when Harvard Business Review looked at this, they found the companies that take explicitly conservative values suffer a loss of about 25% in the likelihood that consumers are going to want to buy their products. So there's nothing unusual in a capitalist country, capitalist economy, with consumers voting with their dollars and voting with their feet, and companies being really attuned to that. So I would just advise Mitch McConnell, you know, I understand what he's saying, but maybe he should actually listen to what voters are saying and reflecting through the positions of companies.
Yeah, companies, as a general rule, this is sort of a broad statement, but they look to see where people are at and how their customers will react. They're not judging things, whereas politicians anymore judge everything from the left or the right. Is it a conservative issue? Is it a liberal issue? The Democrats want it or the Republicans want it? And that's the way politicians tend to view everything. Businesses tend to wonder, how's it playing out in the world? How are the people feeling about it? And they probably have a better sense of it, well, because people either buy their products or don't buy their products. I got a point. McConnell made a point yesterday. He said, well, what I mean is, I think he said something like, what I mean is that Republicans drink Coca-Cola too. And it's a good point. I've often said, I don't know if I'm a businessman, especially a small businessman, by the way. I don't know how much of my politics I want to put up front in my business. But I think when an issue becomes overwhelmingly supported by large numbers of the people, at least of the people who are your constituents, and by that I mean corporate constituents, customers, it only makes sense to listen to them. So, but I just found McConnell be awfully hypocritical. A man who takes millions of dollars of corporate dollars for his political campaigns, saying they ought to stay out of politics. It's just the typical, I like it when you're on my side, I don't like it when you're on the other side.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There's going to be, Joe Biden has talked about being, trying to want to work in a nonpartisan way, or a bipartisan way, I guess I should say, and try to get the Republicans to come along with many of his ideas, and he's tried to say he's not going to be so strident as Trump was, and so on. But we are in a very polarized society, as you point out, especially in the Senate, literally 50-50. And it's going to make getting a lot of legislation hard to pass because everybody has their feet dug in. As simple as that. 50 Republicans say, I'm not going to do this because Biden wants it. 50 Democrats generally will say, I'll do this because Biden wants it. It's really tough. Democrats got a bit of a break this week, though, when the parliamentarian in the Senate seems to have suggested that they can use this so-called reconciliation concept again. They used it with the COVID money recently, that they could use the concept of budget reconciliation for other matters as well, which means they don't have to hit that 60-vote filibuster threshold.
That's right, and this is something that has West Virginia roots all over it. It's sort of an invention of Robert Byrd, the longtime West Virginia senator. And if you want a whole, I won't get into the details. They're a little bit wonky, but I have a whole show about this. If you want to check out the Great Ideas podcast, we do a whole show with a budget expert, actually a Republican, who just gives a great walkthrough of here's what it is, here's how it works, and here's how to fix it. And her prescription is reconciliation is this, in a nutshell, is just this complicated way of saying you don't have to use the regular Senate rules, which leave legislation vulnerable to the filibuster, meaning you normally have to have 60 votes to pass anything, but you can pass things with a simple majority if you use reconciliation. Now, this has a number of really positive effects for Democrats. Before this ruling by this official, the parliamentarian, the biggest game in Washington last week was what I call the train pile-up game. There was a signal from the White House that all of their priorities, they were going to break into two bills. So there were two tickets to trains leaving the station. And one train seemed like it had a good chance of getting to the destination. The other one might not ever leave the train yard. And so every lobbyist in Washington, D.C., every interest group, everyone with an axe to grind or an issue to get accomplished, which train did they want to be on? They all wanted to be on train number one. And so that created a pileup, and you see a little bit of it in the big, it's labeled the infrastructure bill. I think that's a mistake. But you see that in the big infrastructure bill is that there's an awful lot in there. So what does this ruling from the parliamentarian do? It means Democrats can use reconciliation to get around the filibuster more than once. They could use it several times before the 2022 elections. That means more trains leaving the station. They can rearrange what goes where. It makes everything easier. And the final thing I'll say on that, although I could get into the other big principle involved, which I call the Mary Poppins principle, I can get into that in a second. But the other thing I'll say, just for West Virginia listeners, is I think Senator Joe Manchin has got to be smiling today, because this removes some of the pressure on him about the filibuster. It means Democrats can get more done. They don't have to blow up the filibuster as they work their way down their wish list. They can't do everything. You have to have legislation that is tied to the budget in order to get it through using reconciliation. So they can't do everything. They can't do the $15 minimum wage. They can't do the voting laws. But they can do an awful lot. That puts him in a far better position.
It also, though, really spotlights him. If some of these things are going to go through budget reconciliation, for example, the infrastructure bill, it still requires the 50 Democrats all to hold together, and Manchin has already indicated there's parts of that bill, notably the pay-for part of the bill, that he's not totally happy with. He's not happy with the amount of increase in the corporate tax rate. So they're still going to have to do negotiating with Senator Manchin to either make him happy or bring somebody else on board, because he's not supportive at the moment. Even at the 50 vote level, he's not their 50th vote just yet, as that infrastructure bill is currently written.
Well, that's 100% right. And this does, your point really does get to the second effect of all of this, which I call the Mary Poppins principle. If you remember Mary Poppins, remember the song, "A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine
Just
go down"?
Just a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine
you got it.
go down.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You've got a second career, buddy. So look, since the birth of the Republic, the way you pass difficult things in Washington is you add sugar to make the medicine go down. And when you're not able to do that, the medicine frequently does not go down. If you remember when we were having the whole financial meltdown and the Bush administration was trying to pass the TARP bill, it failed. Why? Because they didn't have time to add any sugar to the medicine. Same thing with, ever since Congress got rid of earmarks, which are the ultimate form of Washington sugar, it's gotten harder and harder to pass legislation. So what you have now with the infrastructure bill is, like I said, because of the train pileup, you have many, many things with a ticket on this, what they thought was going to be the one and only train that was really going to have a chance of leaving the station. Now that you can break it up, you can either add more sugar or you can remove some of the medicine and put it in other bills. So, yes, 100% right in my mind that Joe Manchin is still in the catbird seat, no question about that. But now, if you're Chuck Schumer and you're Joe Manchin, you can go behind the scenes and you can do some good old-fashioned horse trading, log rolling. Here's where I need you to be with me. Here's where, if you want to stand up and rail against something and stop it for your politics back home, we can do that. We can work with that. Here's where we can remove some of the medicine that makes a bill awfully tough to pass. And the first thing, of course, that Senator Manchin has said is he doesn't like the pay-for in this bill, which would raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. He says the maximum is 25%. Behind the scenes, corporate executives have been saying in the last day or so to reporters, yeah, we want 25%. So that's now something that Schumer can work with.
Yeah, when Manchin says, when anybody says in a negotiation that I don't like what you've proposed, but then says, but I've got a different number, now we know all we're doing is quibbling over numbers. Manchin doesn't like 28%, but he says 25 is okay. If you're Schumer, or if you're Biden getting involved in this at his level, you're going, okay, so what I need to do now is negotiate what's the number from 25 to 28 that works for everybody.
Right, you're not saying no.
You've got negotiating that can go on once you both have a number in mind.
Exactly. And, again, it's more choices. I mean, I'm more familiar with the House. That's where I work. The way it works in the House, although they have a super slim margin now, so it doesn't work quite this way these days. But, you literally, when you have a vote, the majority leader or the whip, who is the vote counter for your party, will literally stand down in the well of the House, which is the part you see on TV. And they will, if you're on the fence, and for your politics back home, you have to maybe vote against something that your own party wants, they'll make sure they get to the majority, they'll make sure that they've got the bill passed, and then they will release you. And so if you ever watch a vote on C-SPAN, you'll see this happen. As soon as it goes over the 218 margin, all of a sudden a whole bunch of no votes from the majority party will come in. Again, now Democrats only have a 3-vote margin, so you don't see it quite as much. But you kind of have the same effect about to happen in the Senate, where it's not going to happen live during a vote. But Senator Manchin, Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, Democrats who are in the middle, on the fence, can now do a little bit more of that negotiating, that horse trading behind the scenes, what they'll be for, what they'll be against. They can break things up across more bills. They don't have quite as much pressure on them to get everything to happen in this one single rifle shot.
But, Matt, before I let you go, let's talk about what does reconciliation mean for the Biden administration? Joe Biden claims he wants to be this bipartisan guy. He wants to get Republicans to work with him to come up with more bipartisan support for these things. If we're going back to reconciliation for infrastructure, for example, it seems very likely it would be a 50-50 plus Harris vote for infrastructure. Republicans are just going to dig their heels in. So what does it do for Joe Biden, who claims he wants to work with Republicans, if we end up using more and more reconciliation with no Republican votes?
It's tough. Deep down in his DNA, there's been a lot of reporting on the fact that Joe Biden pines for the way things used to be. Mm-hmm. But he recognizes the way things are. And we've seen this movie before. in the Obama administration, where in the futile search for bipartisanship on bills like the stimulus, like the health care bill, legislation was delayed, killed, there were arrows thrown at it until it sank in public opinion. So at this point, the approach the Biden administration has taken is, we will work with you, but you've got to be pretty serious with us if you're a Republican politician. And what they're saying out loud and behind the scenes is the American people are with us. If you look, for example, at this infrastructure bill, the polling over the last week shows that between 70% and 80% of the American public supports all of the pieces of this bill: broadband, the electric grid, roads, drinking water, and the tax paid for. The only thing that brings that polling down is when you say, well, this is coming from the Biden administration, then you lose the Republicans. I think the Biden administration realizes they're going to end up in that kind of partisan fight eventually anyway, so they'd rather get the credit for getting stuff done rather than have the fight end up nowhere and not get the stuff done.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And the other attack line that you're seeing Republicans use and Republican surrogates use is that you call it an infrastructure bill, which makes us think of roads and bridges, and it's really not roads and bridges, which is actually an accurate explanation. It is not just roads and bridges. It is a variety of other kinds of, air quote, infrastructure, including climate infrastructure, including, as you point out, the electric grid, including broadband, which is, I think, critical, certainly in West Virginia and elsewhere as well. I think the public is behind that, but I think when Republicans, focus in on that, well, only, I forget the number they use, is 5.6% of your bill actually is roads and bridges. It sounds like they're trying to pull a fast one on you, and I think that's an attack line the Republicans are using that probably gets some traction until the administration better explains what infrastructure is in their mind.
That strikes me as right. It's true that if you have an inclusive definition of infrastructure that lines up with the way the World Economic Forum does it, and they say the U.S. is 13th in the world in infrastructure, that definition would say that $821 billion out of the plan's $2.25 trillion, that's about 37%, is that kind of infrastructure. Transportation, $621 billion. Electricity, $100 billion. Internet, $100 billion. In this day and age, most people would agree that internet is part of your infrastructure, right?
Yep.
If you're in a rural area, that is super important to the ability of your small business to compete, to the ability of you to go to work in a lot of jobs. I don't think the administration is going to have a hard sell on that point. Where it begins to get squishier is some of the other areas of spending in the bill, like $400 billion for the caretaker economy. Now, you and I could have a good discussion about whether we need more investment in taking care of our elders, which we probably do. But you're right that it does, it just feels
Infrastructure.
What
Yeah,
is
that
infrastructure? But again, it goes back to your first point about the advantage of this sneaky, wonky little ruling from this obscure official, the parliamentarian of the Senate, that you can use reconciliation for more things, because now you can break some of this out. And, maybe you can do what Senator Roy Blunt suggested yesterday, and, you can take the transportation infrastructure, the traditional roads and bridges stuff, and you can put in some of look, we all get that broadband and electricity should be part of this. Maybe you put in a little bit of R&D and manufacturing stuff that companies want. Maybe you do end up at a bill that can get some Republican votes. Probably not. But you can certainly get at something that doesn't feel, as you say, like you're pulling a fast one.
I think Biden would be better off if he could pull a handful of Republican votes for anything. I don't even care what it is, infrastructure, whatever. If he can just say, I've had a couple of bills passed where some Republicans came over and voted with us, I think it would help to cement his concept of working together. Matt, I got to run. I do want to talk maybe next week about this whole concept of infrastructure of the politics that's been put together by the conservatives at first and liberals later, in terms of the media and think tanks and so on. I want to talk about that. That's on your Beyond Politics podcast. Is that right?
Right. The two politics podcasts for people to check out are Beyond Politics and the Great Ideas Show. And if you checked out that show about reconciliation that I did, I had that same expert on great ideas coming back. We're releasing it tomorrow to talk about the infrastructure bill and the question you just raised. Well, what does infrastructure mean? How should we think about that? So, yeah, definitely check that out. Now, happy to come back and talk about it.
All right, we'll do that again next week. And again, people can check out the podcasts wherever they get their podcasts, Apple Podcasts or what have you. Great Ideas podcast, Beyond Politics podcast as well. Matt, always enjoy talking to you. We'll continue to do this on a semi-regular basis. And thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
All right, talk to you again. Thanks a lot. Matt Robeson is a former campaign staffer, a former campaign consultant, a former congressional staffer, talk show host, and has several national podcasts that he does. And we've added him to our list of national correspondents and analysts here on the Watchdog Morning Show to help us talk about some of these issues. And I direct you to his podcast. I was listening to the Beyond Politics broadcast yesterday, or podcast, I should say, yesterday, talking about how back in the 90s, and really even before that, back in the 90s, conservatives said, we've got to do something different. And they created think tanks, and they began to find ways to get a little bit more involved in the media, and that eventually grew into Fox News, and then Rush Limbaugh, and other things, and it took a long time, and all of these pieces had to come into place, and then eventually the country became much more conservative because of a game plan that they had. And if you want to listen to that, it gets on the Beyond Politics podcast. Really interesting stuff. All right, a little behind time, but that's not unusual. I want to talk in a minute about this story coming out of Bethlehem, which has got some folks on Facebook raising questions about, did the cop do the right thing? Having to do with this 85-year-old guy that was in a car crash, was missing, was found, was dropped off at a gas station by the police, and so on. Get into that coming up in just a couple of minutes here on the Watchdog Morning Show. We're here till 10 today, and we will be talking legislative activity coming up in the next hour of the show as well. Looks like the budget bill was held over from yesterday to today down in Charleston, because they're not going to probably pass the income tax bill, which means that there will be more money to spend this year, and they could put some more money back into WVU and Marshall and so on. Got all of that coming up as well. But we better check some headlines for you right now. The folks from WTRF are here with some headlines, and Tony's got the Morning Mountaineer Report, too.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it's
If I can take another break, I'll do just a little tidbit when we come back and take another break if we need to. Did you not get a Darnell today, by the way? I see that you were doing the weather. All right. I thought I got one last night. I don't listen to it. He sends them to me, and I'm glad, but I just immediately delete them. But I thought he sent me one last night.
Drills today. They've been off since last Thursday.
It's an honest conversation that you can be a part of no matter which way you lean. Real Big Talk, weekdays on The Watchdog.
Hello, it's John Kozik, founder and president of TurboTrack Realty, and I buy houses as is, fast for cash. Call me today for an all-cash offer on any of your properties, and we can close within days at 614-362-2000, 362-2000. Do you own a property that's outdated and needs thousands of dollars in repairs? Great, I'll buy it. I'm a private real estate investor who can solve your real estate problems fast for cash. Do you want to sell and just be done with it? Okay, great. I buy vacant properties, boarded up houses, pre-foreclosures, and inherited properties. I also buy apartment buildings, rental portfolios, divorce homes. I even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. I look forward to solving your real estate problems today. Give me a call for an all-cash offer at 614-362-2000, 614-362-2000.
Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection. Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection.
Hello, I'm Chuck Reddick, Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. We're working hard to get ready for tax filing season. You know who else is working hard? Identity thieves. Keep your computers and your mobile phones secure. Use antivirus software and strong passwords. Look out for email scams. Secure your home Wi-Fi with a password. Stay safe when you shop online. Look for HTTPS in the web address. See irs.gov for details.
For all of your IT needs, visit OmniPerforms.com. Omni Strategic Technologies, the only IT company that the Watchdog trusts.
New Belgium Fat Tire Amber Ale is now available in West Virginia and distributed locally by wine and beverage merchants. With its toasty and biscuit-like malt flavors blended perfectly with hoppy freshness, it's bound to become one of your new favorite craft beers. Fat Tire Amber Ale is now available at local retailers. Please don't drink and drive, and drink responsibly. From your friends at Wine and Beverage Merchants.
It's time we put a stop to a few things. Right now, the D.C. establishment has all the power. The For the People Act will stop that. Billionaires buying West Virginia's elections? The For the People Act will stop that. Politicians and their families getting rich while we pay for it? Yep. The For the People Act will stop that too. Senator Manchin, you've always had West Virginia's back. Don't stop now. Stop corruption in its tracks and support the For the People Act, paid for by Represent Us. It's time we put a stop to a few things. Americans voting on machines that aren't made in America? The For the People Act will stop that. States using hackable voting machines with no paper trail? The For the People Act will stop that. Elections with no way to do careful audits or recounts by hand? Yep, the For the People Act will stop that too. Senator Manchin, you've always had West Virginia's back. Don't stop now. Stop election interference and support the For the People Act, paid for by Represent Us.
Over the years, you've brought opioids into your home. They helped when you were in pain, and you held on to them, just in case. But holding on to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Oh, there's something so real about living local, and I know without a doubt I'm not alone. And I love living local. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Said I love living local. WTRF is working for me. The Ohio Valley is where I love to be.
Are you struggling to make payments due to an unexpected financial obligation or loss of income? Are you receiving calls from debt collectors? Are you feeling overwhelmed and unsure of what steps to take next? Then you need the experience and expertise of attorney Tom McIntyre and his staff to help guide you through these temporary hardships. Want to hear more about how Tom can help? Then call 877-456-4155 and receive a free copy of Tom's ebook, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Tom's ebook covers many questions people have about bankruptcy and includes interesting stories about people who tried to avoid filing and people who have filed for bankruptcy. We think you'll be surprised to learn some interesting facts about bankruptcy. Call 877-456-4155.
Dallas, the Watchdog is protecting your yard. Join Howard Monroe, Hoppy Kercheval, Bill DeFabio, and Big Rick for the best live and local talk in the Upper Ohio Valley and beyond. Dallas trusts the Watchdog.
If you miss a part of the show or want to listen again, you can find conversations, interviews, and rants on our podcasts at Apple Podcasts or on WatchdogNetwork.com. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
58 degrees and sunny outside the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Same thing here at my home studios and at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. Sunny and 58 degrees, looking nice. Biffy, I think we've hit a chord with this hot dog contest.
Yeah.
We were discussing it a couple weeks ago with Zach Petty. He brought it back up again today, and I said we need to come up with some kind of a contest where we can, have a hot dog eating contest. And I don't think like a Nathan's contest, not like a how many hot dogs can you squeeze into your mouth at one time, but where we have a sampling of different kinds of hot dogs and so on. I got we've got a sponsor already. I'm not going to say who or what, but I got an email here this morning from a prominent local institution that says, love the idea, gave me some additional suggestions on how it could be done, and said that they might even want to sponsor our event.
Cool.
Our hot dog contest may be getting closer and closer to reality than I thought, Biffy. That's pretty That's pretty neat. And this excites me because it means I'll get to eat hot dogs.
Who doesn't like hot dogs?
I mean, I'm very excited about and I don't know that they always match my, my heart healthy diet, but I'd have to do it because it's business, right? I mean, I gotta eat these hot dogs, it's business. At least that would be my.
At least you have an excuse.
That would be my argument. So, yeah. So this may be catching on. Gonna have to get to work on that. And he points out to me that National Hot Dog Day is July 22nd. That'd be a perfect day, right?
Yes, it would.
National Hot Dog Day. Going to work on this. Got to work on the big hot dog event with the Watchdog. 6 before the hour here on the Watchdog Morning Show. Speaking of food, which we have been doing a lot this morning and do every day, we all have had the experience, I'm sure, at one time or another of going to a fast food restaurant, whether it's Arby's or McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or Burger King or Wendy's or wherever you go. Going to the fast food lane and discovering it ain't so fast at all, right? You sit in that line and you go, oh, come on, please, what's going on up there? I mean, we've all had that. And sometimes we get angry and sometimes just go, hey, I get it. And you've had that happen, right, Biffy?
Well, yeah, I mean, every once in a while it happens, and, you kind of hope it's not one of those times where you're in a hurry and you have to be somewhere, but it seems like when it does happen to you, it couldn't have happened at a worse moment.
Yeah, exactly. There are times when it's like, oh, come on, I only got 10 minutes left, and I got to be somewhere, and yeah. But so we all, at one point or another, I don't think there's a single person listening to us who hasn't gotten frustrated by being in a line. But how do you deal with that frustration? Let us go down to Memphis, Tennessee, where police were called to a Burger King because a woman who was in line at the fast food drive-thru area had to wait, as we all had to do, had to wait for her food. And when she got to the window, she was not happy. I had to wait so long. What's going on with you people? It was a verbal altercation. And although I don't think I've ever done that, verbal altercations probably do happen. Some of you who are fast food restaurant workers probably can tell me stories about times you've been berated because somebody had to wait in line. And that's just, sadly, that's part of the job. But then comes the part that isn't part of the job. After, I don't know why I had to wait. What's wrong with you? Why can't you get that stuff done? And I think I'm... After that, she pulled a gun. And she stuck the gun through the drive-thru window and began shooting at the employees inside. Needless to say, cops were called. Workers had managed to escape. Fortunately, I'm telling you, they're lucky, because that's a small enclosed place you tend to be in there, right? I mean, somebody starts shooting through that window, you could easily get hit. But they weren't. Nobody was harmed. They fled out the back door, were not hurt. The woman and a man who was with her had driven away. The police are seeking her out. It's in Memphis, Tennessee. This is the world in which we live, Biff. This is the world in which we live.
It's crazy.
People will pull a gun and not just threaten, which in itself is terrible, literally shoot inside a fast food restaurant because they had to wait in line. Something we all, at one time or another, have done. Not the shooting part. The waiting in line part. And it's why every once in a while, Biffy, with road rage and all this kind of stuff, every once in a while I get really angry and I want to give the one-fingered salute to somebody because I'm really ticked off at something, right?
Yep.
And then I say to myself, on the other hand, they could have a gun.
I mean, you do that, you don't know what's coming back at you. It might be another middle finger. It might be two hands up in the air. It might be a gun. It might be a knife. Who knows?
I have never had it happen to me, nor I have a friend who a number of years ago, and it was on going off the 16th Street ramp off of I-70 in Wheeling. And I can't remember what, I guess he wasn't going fast enough or whatever. Anyway, looked out his side window, and the guy in the car behind him who was angry at him didn't shoot, but he was waving a gun around. Holy crap! I would pee my pants.
That'll make you go quicker. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Jeez. Can't wait in line. I'll shoot. Unbelievable. All right, ABC covers the world for us next. We have another hour to go. I got a couple of other odds and ends I want to get to. I want to talk about this story out of Bethlehem with the 85-year-old man that was missing, was found. Did the police do everything right? I think so, but some people on social media are raising some questions. We'll take a little time to talk about that. And the legislature, it is, as I said yesterday, the final four. Actually, now it's the final three. Final 3 days left to go. How much more damage can they do in Charleston? Oh, a lot. Yeah, 3 days, they can do a lot. We'll talk about it all coming up.
They twinkle as the boys play rock and roll. They know that they can't dance.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Way to use force on suspect.
John and or Fuzzy there? Okay, next. I'm not sure. Rocky asked me to fill in. He said Brent and he were not going to be there. I didn't know whether the other guys were coming or not. So, okay, I got plenty of material, so we'll be fine. If either one of them does show up, just give me an alert so I know to talk to them. But that's fine. Yeah, I actually got a note from the community college that they were listening to. Thought that was a great idea. I'd like to co-sponsor our hot dog event. So that's sounds good. Sounds good. Well, I think we'll have to do this. All right. Let's see. My wife is going somewhere, so I better go tell her goodbye for a few minutes, and I'll be back in a minute. All right.